Hi, everybody. Welcome to our meeting. It is 10 minutes past 8 on September 8th. This is your weekly Zoom meeting for the Common Law Conversations group, or news as we're calling it when we get our website going. Tonight's going to be a pretty good meeting. We're going to talk about something that's going to help a lot of folks out. For the folks who are going to be watching this later, I'll note what documents we're going over, what we're reading from. We're going to be going over something that will allow you, if you get drug into court, to escape or win. Or winning if you get drug into criminal court is not coming out with money in your pocket. It's coming out, period, coming out. So a lot of times I talk with folks who are facing off with police officers, they're facing off with CPS, and afterwards they always regret what they've said. They're like, oh, I should have said this, or I should have said that. If you walk away and you still have your freedom, you still have your kids, you still have your property, you just won. It doesn't matter what you said.
Would this be the appropriate time to use the phrase walk away as a like the debtor
Oh yeah, walk away as a creditor versus a debtor. Yes. If you're walking away, you remained a creditor. If you're in cuffs, you've been turned into a debtor. But you can still stay honorable. Even Jesus got arrested, and he never became a debtor. So to start tonight off, I'm going to read you guys something. I'm going to read you something from the United States Code. It is 1 U.S. Code subsection 1. It's the very first page of the United States Code. So if you were to print the entire United States Code out and get past the, I don't know, the introduction, the copyright, whatever you want to call it, the very first thing you're going to run across is 1 U.S. Code subsection 1. All right. Now this is from Cornell University, which is usually pretty good for all citations. law.cornell.edu. If you do a search for 1 U.S. Code subsection 1 or 1 U.S. Code, this is what's going to pop up as your very first search result. And what we're going to be talking tonight about is words, because when you walk into court, or in the case, the couple times I've been in court, when you're taken into court and you're in chains and a jumpsuit, everything is predicated off of words. And what they do is they start asking you questions, and depending upon how you respond, depends upon whether they keep you or you walk out a free man or woman. And what I'm going to explain to you is very simple and very easy to do. However, it's very difficult because it's very straightforward, and we've been trained to do the opposite. This is actually easier for a child than it is an adult. We played some games at my house last night involving this technique, and we have a 8-year-old who got it. Like, his responses were sometimes dead on, and they would just blurt out before anybody else's. It's hilarious. And you can have a lot of fun with this. This is a game you can play with the family, the whole family. Imagine that, a game you can play with the whole family regarding how to stay out of jail, which if you're not teaching your children how to stay out of jail, then yeah, you're not teaching your children. So,
but it could also be used in not just like the context of staying out of jail, but communicating with anyone in a place of authority.
Yes, talking to police, talking to CPS agents, talking to IRS agents, talking to anyone who holds a governmental ID card and is standing on the side of what we call government. So we're going to go over 1 U.S. Code subsection 1, and then we're going to go over something called the red herring argument, or the red herring fallacy. And then we're going to talk about how this works, okay? Now, when we go through 1 U.S. Code subsection 1, it is not my intent for you to understand it. It's my intent for you to see how insane the entire system of law is, okay? So here we go. This says, in determining, and we got to look at every word, right? Because every word is important when you're dealing in law. In determining the meaning of any act of Congress, now this is federal, and if you look into your state laws, you'll find something very similar, if not exactly like this. In determining the meaning of any act of Congress, unless the context indicates otherwise, Now, here we go. In determining the meaning of any act of Congress, unless the context indicates otherwise, words importing the singular include and apply to several persons, parties, or things. So words importing, and by importing, they mean when you write a word on a document, you're importing that word into whatever reality you're in, I guess. Words importing the singular include and apply to several persons, parties, or things. So we just did away with anything meaning singular or plural. Words importing the plural include the singular. Words importing the masculine gender include the feminine as well. So when you wonder why the whole entire body of legislative law cannot differentiate between a man and a woman, maybe this is why. Words used in the present tense include the future as well as the present. Now, keep in mind, I'm not reading you something that I wrote. I'm reading you something that our governing authorities wrote. The cover page, actually. Words insane and insane person shall include every idiot, insane person, and person non compos mentis. Non compos mentis is Latin for crazy in the head. The words insane and insane person shall include every idiot, insane person, and person non compos mentis. The words person and whoever include corporations, companies, associations, firms, partnerships, societies, and joint stock companies, as well as individuals. Officer includes any person authorized by law to perform the duties of the office. Oath includes affirmation, and sworn includes affirmed. Signature or subscription includes a mark when the person making the same intended it as such, and writing includes printing and typewriting and reproductions of visual symbols by photographing, multigraphing, mimeographing, manifolding, or otherwise. Now, with what I just wrote you, or just read you, my glasses just broke.
You gonna fetch you some?
Yeah, if you could find another pair, that'd be great. There's some laying in there. There's also a bag hanging off the entertainment center. Meanwhile, I'll just look like this. With what I just read you, do you think that you can go into a courtroom and have meaningful communication with the entities therein? Do you think that you can go into a courtroom and speak and have the same meaning of your words as their words? So what we're going to go over tonight, and if you look in state law, you're going to find this stuff too. I had some of Kentucky's stuff printed out, and it may not be on the front page like it is with 1 U.S. Code subsection 1, but you'll find a lot of the exact same stuff because all these legislative bodies copy off each other. It's not unusual, like with the assumed name certificate laws, to find the exact same phrases in just about every state. Sometimes they change it around or they'll change the order of the sentences. For the most part, things are pretty much the same from state to state. So if you think you can walk into a courtroom and come out a winner using their language, you're going to be in a very sore spot indeed. This is why 95% of all those who are pulled into federal court plead guilty before they even go to trial, and why of the 5% that go to trial, about 90 to 95% of those lose. Oh, look at that. Thank you very much. There you go. I kind of hate that. So we read 1 U.S. Code subsection 1, and we hear things like plural includes singular, singular includes plural, masculine includes feminine, feminine includes masculine. This is not all of it, okay? In the beginning of each section of law, you'll find definitions, and those definitions within that law mean whatever they want it to mean. So when you walk into court and they start asking you questions, we have this very bad tendency to do two things. Number one, that's answer the question. And number two, we have a tendency to import our own meaning of those words. So if I look at you and I say, what is your name? Then there's a particular meaning to the word, a particular definition to the word name. There's also a definition to the word your. I'm a little older than a lot of folks, but maybe many of you here remember when Bill Clinton was impeached. When I was in the military, Bill Clinton was in the executive seat of the White House, and he became impeached for things we won't delve into on this call. And one of the questions that he was asked, he answered, depends upon what your meaning of the word is. And everyone thought that was funny. But a little while after that, they stopped the proceedings and dismissed all the charges and stopped the impeachment. He was letting them know that he was going to dissect what they were going to use as the language that was going to be used against him. I've heard this said before, and the more I deal with it, the more I understand it to be true, and that English is a slave language. And it very much is. It's very difficult to talk to someone and not use slave lingo. For instance, if I look at you and I say, where do you live? Well, we all take that to mean, where is your residence? But residence is defined in law as wherever a government official resides. It's a Roman term. It comes from Rome at some point. Maybe before that it became from Phoenicians, who knows? But it has a heavy Roman connotation. And it's where a government agent, a government employee resides. If I say, where do you live? And you say, well, I live at this address. Does that mean that you, a living man or woman, have an address? Because living people can't have an address. That's only for dead entities, is an address. What the cop who's asking you that, or the judge who's asking you that, actually means is, where is your first, middle, last name, legal name, domiciled? That's what they're wanting to know. Just like, where is Walmart domiciled? I can say, hey, which Walmart do you prefer? And you can say, well, I like the one in this county, or I like the one over on this street. It doesn't matter. It's all one Walmart. The headquarters for Walmart is located at a particular domicile. There's only Walmart. Inherently, we know this, but we've all been trained to think otherwise. And when you're talking to a police officer, when you're talking to a judge, when you're talking to a CPS agent, you are not using regular English. You're using legalese, and legalese has an entirely different meaning. What is the meaning of it? It's whatever they want it to be. The English that they use means whatever they want it to mean. So one of the things that we went through last night here is we went over, I just made up a list of words. And we divided everybody up into two groups. And we have quite a few people here. So there's a pretty good chance that there's, several people on each side of the room. And I would say a word, and I would ask the first group, I would ask one group to give me the regular meaning of the word. And then I would ask the group on the other side of the room to give me an alternate meaning. And that alternate meaning doesn't necessarily have to be the actual meaning of the word. For instance, let's take the word, and this one's a phrase, but it's a good one to start with. Let's take the phrase court order. We're to ask folks, what does the phrase court order mean? Most people would say, well, that is
an order from the court.
An order from the court, an order from a judge. But what if it could also mean that is where the court places an order for food when they're hungry? Like when you're having a long trial, a court can place an order, a court order. That sounds silly, right? But why not? I mean, if you can use your own definitions, and the court can use its own definitions. If I can use my own definitions, the court uses its own definitions. Everybody has a different definition, and that doesn't work out very well when you're trying to have a meaningful conversation. But when you are in court, and remember, court is any proceeding where all three parties of the trust are present: the executor, the trustee, and the beneficiary. So if you're talking to a CPS agent, or you're talking to an IRS agent, or you're talking to a police officer on the side of the road, you are holding court because you are the trustee and they represent the executor and the beneficiary. So you're holding court. If you get pulled over by a police officer and then you later go to the physical building in front of a judge, that's not your first court appearance. That's your appeal. You've already been convicted. You've already been found guilty. You're found guilty the minute an officer approaches you. So let's take the word device. What does the word device mean? What's a good meaning for device?
An electronic item.
An electronic item. Well, to me, what device means is to remove a vice. Like, some people may have a vice of alcohol. Some people may have a vice of coffee. The vice, take the vice away, right? Now, this is going to sound silly to you at first. And if you ever do this, you're going to feel silly. And you're going to feel
like an idiot.
You're going to feel like an idiot. But here's the thing. One of the things that we went through last night was Matthew 10. And real quick, I'll be consulting Matthew 10 a few times in here because Jesus told us all about this stuff. He told us all about going to court. He told us all about what would happen to us. And inside of Matthew 10, there's this phrase, there's this sentence. Behold, I send you forth as sheep in the midst of wolves. Be ye therefore wise as serpents and harmless as doves. Okay? That's what you want to be when you walk into court. Now, you hear a lot of this sovereign citizen stuff, and I've seen people go into court and they start yelling and they start fighting and they start arguing. You don't want to do that. It's not going to work out very well for you. If it does, it's very, very, very rare that works out. You're not being as harmless as a dove if you're threatening the judge's bond. You're not being harmless as a dove when you're raising your voice. You're not being harmless as a dove when you are telling them that you are a living man and you need to be let go immediately. Okay? Now, anyone who's the old guard in our group has known that I often talk about being honorable and only responding when with a question. Okay, but there's going to be times when that may not be advantageous for you. Okay, and I very quickly found out when I was speaking to authorities, and I have spoken to a lot of authorities. I've been on the side of that fence. I was a federal investigator, but I also ended up in a situation at one point where I got arrested and found myself in chains and shackles in a federal courtroom. If you've ever been in state court, it's like a circus. Federal court's a little different. Federal court is very ordered. You're usually in a large, beautiful building, what we would call a Tartarian building. The judge sits way up high on a beautiful oak bench. It's very intimidating. And if you've never been in it, you just don't know how intimidating it can be. But it can be intimidating. But when you're in court, I learned very quickly when I was talking to cops when I was in court that words have a very specific meaning. Thank God I learned some of this stuff before I ended up in that spot. I cannot imagine what a disaster I would have found myself in. I'd have probably went to prison if I had not known a little bit before I went in. So we want to be as wise as serpents and as harmless as doves, even if that means sounding like an idiot. You never pay attention to what a court says. I once had a young lady who was going to court for a criminal matter. And we went through a few mantras, and I prepared her as well as I could at that time with the level of experience and knowledge that I had. And she goes into court, and I said, the first thing you're going to do when the judge calls your name is you're going to object. You're going to let him call your name twice, and then you're going to stand up and you're going to say, Your Honor, I object. And then you're going to read this, even if you have to read it word per word from an index card, which I believe she did. When she got done reading the mantra, which went on for quite some time, the judge was quiet for a moment, and then all hell broke loose. She got yelled at. The judge raised his voice. He told her that he would throw her in jail. He told her that he would do all sorts of things. And then he kicked her out of the courtroom, and he told her, while she was in tears, and he told her, do not ever come into my courtroom talking like that again. Now, this courtroom was a state courtroom, and it was packed full of a lot of people, as state courtrooms actually are. And she called me crying, and she said, Bill, she said, I can't believe you did that to me. And I said, what did what to you? What? You're calling me. So obviously you're not in jail. She said, that was so embarrassing. She said, I just got kicked out of the courtroom. I said, well, that's great. Congratulations. She said, you don't understand. That was so embarrassing. Everyone in there saw that. And I said, well, yeah, of course they did. They weren't going to pat you on the back and tell you job well done and dismiss the case. I said, the fact that you got booted out, that's a good thing. You want to get booted out of court. I used to do investigative work that led me into a lot of facilities, and I once got kicked out of a federal prison. Long story, but I figured getting kicked out of a federal prison was much better than being drug into one. And the same with the courtroom. It's much better to get kicked out than it is to get pulled in. And so I said, just don't worry about it. I said, wait and see what they do. Okay. I've often heard it said that the modern court system is are the sons of Cain. They say they will not follow the law, and then they do. Whereas the sons of Abel said that they would follow the law and don't. Now dissect that as you will, but don't pay attention to what is said in court as much as to what is done. I told her just to just to chill out and just watch the case online for the next few weeks and see what happens. So she did. And she called me up real happy one day. She said, Bill, you're not going to believe this. The case is dismissed. I said, well, good. Actually, good job. You did the exact right thing. You said the right thing. She said, I never would have thought that by the way I got yelled at. I said, well, you're not going to, because when you start doing some of the tactics and techniques that we talk about in these calls, they're not going to want you in their courtroom. They're not going to want other people in the court to see. It's the same reason as when you're driving on private tags and a sheriff or a police officer or a state trooper gets behind you and all of a sudden they get over in the other lane and take off and get away from you, or they turn away. They don't want other people seeing them behind you with those private tags, because then they're going to be wondering why in the hell you didn't get pulled over. And it's the same thing in a courtroom. When you say and do the right things to get your way, they are going to do that which is going to be most beneficial to their appearance. They do not want the other slaves waking up. Okay. So keep that in mind when you're dealing with courts. Pay attention to what they do, not what they say. Now, of course, when you first go in there, you're going to be battling with words. So let's go over a few more words. Okay. Let's take the word father. Let's say that somebody in a courtroom said, is that over there? Is that your father? Say family court. You're talking to your kid or something, right? What can father mean? What's the first thing that comes to your mind when you think of father?
Someone that fathered a child, or like,
oh, yes. Someone that fathered a child, a parent, a male parent, right? What's another father? The heavenly father,
our
God.
Father who art in heaven.
Our Father who art in heaven, right? Retire. What's the first thing you think of when you hear the word retire?
Like the end of working a
Yep.
job.
You've been a slave for 25 years. Now you get a gold watch and you get a pension, right? Pension. Retire. To me, the word retire can mean to put new tires on your car. I'm going to retire my car, right? I'm going to put new tires on it. I'm going to take the tread off the old tire and put new tread on it.
Is that actually what it means, or are you saying that's the silly meaning?
That's the silly meaning.
Okay.
Okay. That's my meaning. We're doing double meanings here. Okay. And we're going somewhere with this. Don't just think this is word salad and we're just messing around here. This is deadly serious. This can save you. Book. What's the word book mean?
Pages bound together.
Pages bound together. It could also mean to hurry up and get out of somewhere. He booked out of there.
Get out of here.
Right. Minor. You know, if somebody looks at a child and says, or looks at you and says, is your child a minor? What would you say? Just the regular meaning.
Oh, well, if it has to do with their age, then either yes, they are, or no, they aren't.
Yes, they are. No, they aren't. Right. When I was doing the investigative work for the government, I once interviewed a fellow who had a coal mining background, and I asked him during I was interviewing him for access to sensitive information, classified information, security clearance, and he was a miner, and he was really tense. I mean, super tense. This guy was so nervous, and I asked him if he consumed alcohol, and he said yes. And I said, well, that's going to be a problem. And he said, well, what do you mean? And I said, well, you're consuming alcohol as a minor. Now, it was a joke, and I was trying to relax the guy, and it worked. He seemed really tense at first, and then he started laughing. And you don't get good information out of somebody if you're interrogating them if they're all tense, regardless of what the police officers show you. Generally, you want to get the person relaxed to get the good information. Putting them under lights with hoses is not a very good tactic. So minor can mean either an underage child, or it can mean somebody who works under the ground in a coal mine.
Or like the musical term, major and a minor.
A major and a minor, right. Words have multiple meanings. Now, you're going to have to practice thinking of these dual meanings to yourself. And when someone speaks to you, it would be good if you would pick out one large word in that sentence, one important word, and think of a dual meaning. You can start doing this in your head. You don't have to actually say this to the person, but then you look insane, right? So what we're going to do now is we're going to go over something called the red herring fallacy. And everybody may not know what the red herring fallacy is, so we're going to cover that real quick. And it's going to be very important to the strategy that we're going to go over tonight. Ooh, thank you. The red herring strategy. Okay, so a herring is a fish. And when a herring is smoked, it goes from being silvery in color to being a really bright red, hence red herring. And I used to think that red herring, the phrase red herring was started when they used to train dogs who to scent to follow a scent. You would take a red herring, which is, if you've ever been around a red herring, it's amazingly smelly. I enjoy them. They're delicious, but they're really smelly. They would tie it to a string, drag it on the ground, and teach the dog to follow the scent. And that may well have been done, but there was a fellow who researched the word and found out that they were actually training horses originally several hundred years ago with red herrings. You would drag it along the ground when you were training the horse, or you were in a fox hunt, and you would teach the horse to focus, because a horse can follow a trail like a bloodhound. I used to have a horse, a Palomino stallion, that would follow me around. If I went outside and slipped past him and went back in the woods, he would pick my trail up and follow me with his nose to the ground, just like a bloodhound. And so they would train the stallion to focus on the herring instead of all the chaos going around them in a hunt. So if you've ever been around a fox hunt, there's a lot going on. It's very busy. There's dogs, there's guns. It's very, very hectic and chaotic. So a red herring is also a fallacy. So the purpose of a red herring is to distract the reader or listener from the actual issue being discussed in a conversation or piece of writing. And this isn't always for nefarious purposes. I don't know if anyone here has ever read Agatha Christie. She uses red herrings constantly inside of her books. You'll be going down one path with who you think the whodunit was, and at the end of the story, plot twist, and all those things were distractions. She's great at that. So here's an example of a red herring. Okay.
Oh, I would say if you're missing a page, it's over on that side.
I got you. Damn. Person number one: you always leave your stuff all over the room. You don't lock the door behind you and the trash is piling up. You're a slob. Person number two: well, you never pull your car all the way into the driveway, so I'm always stuck having to park in the street. Person two just engaged in a red herring. They completely derailed what originally came at them. Person one: all restaurants should be required to list the calories of each dish on their menu. Person two: well, most of the restaurants in our city have low calorie options. See how they just took that and went sideways with it? Our new boss doesn't schedule enough staff for Fridays. Person two: yeah, but our old boss could never get enough people to work on Sundays. Person one: I'm not comfortable wearing a leotard in public. Person two: well, leotards are never comfortable. They're made of shiny fabric and remind me of watching gymnastics on TV. Here's a good one. You've probably used this. A child will say, I don't want to put my pajamas on. Or they'll balk at putting on their pajamas near bedtime. And the parent says, well, let's go brush our teeth and get ready for bed. What are you doing? You're pulling the child's attention away from the pajamas, and you're focusing on something else, but you're still getting your will done, right? Red herrings can be very useful, and it can be very useful in court. So let's look at a few sentences here and see how this could work with just some regular sentences. Some of these might be court related, some of them not, but I want to give you a feel for this so that you can start practicing it either with other folks around you, friends, family, other folks in our group, or just in your head when you're conversing with folks day to day. So let's say that I were to look at you and say, did you send your father those papers? Okay. Now, our first reaction is going to be to understand what they're saying and work within the frame of the socially acceptable or the usual customarily acceptable words. So let's say you're in court and you're being asked by the prosecutor if you sent your father some papers. Did you send your father some papers? Or did you send your father those papers? The victim, or I'm sorry, the defendant in this particular case may be tempted to say something like, well, let me see those papers. Yeah, I sent my father those papers. But now what has he just done? He's assumed the meaning of all those words. So let's take the first word in there that is of any notice to me. It's father, that we can really change the meaning around. You could respond like this: Well, I'm a Christian, and every time I try to send my father papers, the post office always brings them back because every time I address anything to heaven, it just doesn't get there. I don't think the post office knows how to get there.
In the game last night, the word that
Mhm.
was picked up on was actually papers instead of father. And
Yes.
so that got turned into, well, I did send a birthday card.
There
I'm
you
pretty
go.
sure.
What papers? Well, I sent my father a birthday card last week, or his birthday was 6 months ago. And I meant to send him a card and I forgot. Well, I caught hell for not sending those papers to my father. Now, does that sound nuts? If you think it sounds nuts, then I want to bring you back to
Which paper are you looking for?
with the one I can't find to 1 U.S. Code subsection 1. That's all right. It's not a big deal. I mean, you can try to find them. But I've got so many papers here. I'm not very good at keeping my desk clean. So if you think what we're doing here sounds insane, we'll read 1 U.S. Code subsection 1 and try to put yourself in the place of being the one that has to understand the language that's coming at you in the U.S. Code. It doesn't make sense. And that makes perfect sense because our entire commercial system was originally designed by the Canaanites, who later became the Phoenicians. And the Phoenicians are the ones who traveled upon the seas. They were great traders. They were the sons of Cain. They weren't very good people. And they, to this day, have designed our entire legal system. Okay. And they still exist. The Canaanites never went away. Yeah, you can let him. The Canaanites never went away. And the Canaanites serve who? Their father, the devil. And they're going to do things inside out and upside down. That is why in today's world, what is good is labeled as bad. What is bad is labeled as good, right? So someone who decides to, become the opposite gender is often applauded, whereas someone who tries to do what is right in accordance with God's law is often derailed and often persecuted because everything's inside out. Our legal system is the same way. Our goal here is to learn how to use this in favor. Wise as a serpent, harmless as a dove. So let's say that you're in court because you've been driving on private tags and you did actually get pulled into court. And the judge looks at you and says, I hear you've been driving illegally. Okay. Now, your first instinct is going to be to answer the question or to defend yourself. Don't do that. What is a word in I hear you've been driving illegally? What is a word there that you could take and use your own definition? Well, the first word that pops out to me is driving. When I was a child, I once had to drive a herd of cattle up the road after they got out and about 10 miles south of my farm. I was 8 and I had to drive them home. So I might say, well, actually, I did have horses get out the other day and I had to drive them back home and to stop. Now, what I should tell you that you're going to need to do before you engage in this, if you find yourself in court or in front of a cop or CPS agent, and we're going to go with the court example first, because that's what I'm most familiar with in regards to putting this to practice and it being successful for someone other than me, because I've used it with individual police officers, sheriff's deputies, stuff like that, is you're going to want to go to court and you can go ahead and we're just going to pretend that you're going to state your legal name and do all that crap, right? Like when they call your name, you're going to stand up and say, I'm here. And then you're going to get asked questions. And the first thing you need to do is you need to say, look, I understand that words are important. Okay. So I have brought my own set of definitions for use today. And I would like to use these definitions in our court today. Now, they're not going to permit that. They're going to immediately either say no, or they're just going to pass it by and ignore it. Okay. But you've gotten it on the record. You said it that you want to use your own definitions and they're going to refuse. They cannot use your definitions. So it really doesn't matter what you have in your hand. It would really help if you had some kind of batch of papers or a dictionary or something, and you could say, I want to use my own definitions. They're going to refuse. So now you've established the premise for when you start using your own definitions to the words. Now, the thing about going into court is if you say something like, I'm a living man or I'm a living woman, they can't engage you. So they're just going to ignore that and go right on by. They're just going to completely ignore that. Okay. Anytime you say something they can't engage or is not in their favor, they're just going to pass it by. They're going to ignore you. Okay. Um, if the judge doesn't outright chastise you. Okay. So one of the things that can get you in trouble is not speaking. If you remain silent, they can get you on acquiescence, agreement by acquiescence. That means if I look at you and I say, hey, do you want to go to dinner? And you get in the car, we head to dinner, and I on the way I say, what's my assumption you're going to pay, and you don't say anything. Then at the end of the dinner, you've agreed to pay because you went ahead and performed by your actions. That's a contract. So you don't want to remain silent. The great thing about this tactic is when you use it, you're not remaining silent. You're using your own definitions, and they can't get you for not answering. Now, they're going to be very confused with you at first, and they're going to ask you questions. We can cover some of those questions. For instance, one of the things I got asked in federal court by a federal judge was, are you crazy? Now, that's a very, very pivotal question. I knew enough at that time to know that if I said no, I had just offered a defense. And how do you prove you're not crazy? Because you have to prove your statements, right? How do you prove you're not crazy? Well, you go to a state, mental health facility against your will, involuntarily, and you get tested to see if you're crazy. I also knew that if I said yes, that was a quick route also to a mental health facility, right? So I said a quick prayer, and here's the words that came out of my mouth. I asked the judge, I said, do you have the qualifications to issue or to evaluate someone on the basis of mental health or something like that? And he just ignored it and kept going. But if I'd said no or yes, I would have gotten in trouble. And you will be asked if you're crazy when you use something like this, okay? That's okay. That is okay. Remember, you're going to be wily like a fox. You're going to be wise as a serpent, but harmless as a dove. Now, the goal here is also to prattle on. Now, I've got that. You may have to work on that. I can prattle on endlessly. Ideally, you're going to prattle on until they stop you. Okay. So let's take let's take one that you might hear in court. Okay. Or by a police officer. Do you know how fast you were going back there? Back there? Like this morning when I woke up? Oh yeah, when I come out of my driveway, man, I was moving. I was moving when I came out of my driveway this morning. But if you're asking me how fast I was going right back there, like over there, I wasn't going fast at all, because to me, the word fast means, you're speeding, and I don't use speed. I don't use any kind of drugs, as a matter of fact. You don't have any allegations against me for using drugs, do you? I had a friend who was using drugs one day, and I told him, I said, man, this stuff is going to get you in trouble. And at some point, people are going to step in and stop you because you're prattling on. And this actually takes a good bit of practice, and it also takes a good bit of confidence, okay? It is the most difficult thing in the world to act like you're dumb when you're smart, okay? It's anytime you see an actor on TV who's holding the part of a very unintelligent entity, it's very difficult, okay? Look at the movie Forrest Gump. Forrest Gump, Tom Hanks did that wonderfully, right? He was supposed to be retarded, but some of the things he said were amazingly insightful. And it turns out he actually wasn't that not smart after all. He was very successful. That whole show, that whole movie embodies pretty much what we're trying to teach you here. So let's move on to another one here. Will you, I would like to see your license, registration, and proof of insurance. Oh, I bet you would. Cop's going to look at you. He's going to shake his head. He's going to say, what? Oh, I bet you would. He said, what? Doesn't mean repeat. It could also mean speak up, right? Well, will you show me your license, registration, and proof of insurance? Well, I will if you ask. Well, I'm asking. Well, I'm telling you. Now, honestly, with a police officer, you're just going to piss him off. But you know what? Nothing happens in a traffic stop until you start answering the questions the way that he wants you to. And if you pull this off successfully, you can walk away without a ticket. I've done it. When I joined the military, I very quickly learned that a Kentucky accent did not always get me where I needed to go. So I learned how to drop the accent. But I also found instances where using a heavy Kentucky accent and acting like the proverbial dumb hillbilly actually got me where I needed to go. I did it more than once. I also used it to get my way when I was talking to folks and I needed something, because there were a lot of times that people just disarm themselves from all the mental armaments that we accumulate dealing with people when I spoke to them and I acted like I wasn't all that goal focused, all that intelligent, right? So you spend all this time, especially if you're in this call, you spend all your time studying courts and court procedure, and we've gone over a lot of this stuff, and we study the laws, and here I am stepping in and telling you that you're going to ignore all that and talk like an idiot. It can get you your way, and it can actually save your life. I don't know if anyone remembers back in the late 90s, there was a fellow by the name of Irwin Schiff. Irwin Schiff was one of the first protesters in the whole tax protest movement. And for the record, and for any of the federal agents who will later review this video, I believe that you should pay all the taxes that you are obligated to pay. The question is what taxes are you obligated to pay, right? Render unto Caesar what is Caesar's. Well, Irwin Schiff, he had a pretty good ideal. I mean, as far as like his intent, which was to keep people from paying taxes that they weren't obligated to pay. But he also misled a lot of people, and the direction that he went, it wasn't all that great. And at one point, I know that he had, I don't know, like 16 people who were heavily teaching his stuff. And at one point, the Fed stepped in and arrested them all on the same day and did a group indictment. You know how they'll put everybody in the same courtroom and just do one indictment. Saves on tax dollars, right? Well, I think 15 of those guys, if there were 16, there were 15 of them who went to prison. And I think all of them went to prison for at least 12 to 15 years, some of them more. A lot of those guys actually died in prison. I'm pretty sure some of them are still in prison. But there was one fellow who got removed from the case and kicked out of the courtroom. He did what I'm telling you about tonight. So let's try another one real quick.
Can I say something about that?
Jump in there.
So how much longer after Mr. Schiff, can't remember his first name, started teaching, when he was teaching, did that arrest happen? Like, was it?
I don't know. We could find out real quick.
Well, what I mean is last night when we were playing the game and talking and you shared the story, we talked about the kind of the wait and see approach, that people will just pop on the scene and teach these things and tell you to do all the stuff, but it's not been tested and you don't know what's going to happen when you do. You've got to do your due diligence because all these people trusted what this guy said.
Right.
And then just followed his whatever. And then.
Right. You've got to be careful who you follow. That includes me. You need to be questioning anyone that you're looking to for advice, especially when you're being advised to do things that are contrary to the usual way that folks do things. Schiff, it looks like Schiff actually died in prison in 2015. He was serving a sentence of 13.5 years at the time of his death at the age of 87. Now, I didn't agree with a lot of what Schiff taught, and I didn't try any of it. I think that if you're going to use the legal name and you're not going to register it, as we've talked about in our previous videos, that there's not much that can get you out of paying federal and state taxes. I've never seen anything that wouldn't land folks in hot water. Another thing that I want to caution folks against is there's a lot of folks who are trying to tap into this trust that is supposedly lodged when your birth certificate is created.
Birth certificate and social security.
And social security card. And I believe that actually happens. I think that they do put certain amounts of money into circulation as a result of certain events, and that we do back the public money. The future earnings and labor of the population is the backing for the money at this point. There's no gold or silver money or anything that is backed by gold or silver. But anything that involves filing certain IRS forms in order to get back money that you've spent on bills or that you've paid banks or that you've paid for utilities. I've been involved in this stuff for a long time. I tried a lot of it and I've never seen anything that works. If you find something that someone tells you works and they're asking you to pay for it, I would say that almost always that particular thing is not valid. I have a friend recently who was contacted, um, who's very good with this stuff. He was down in Georgia, and the fellow said that he would like to sell him his package. This guy actually called him up, and he was offering a package for like, I don't know, $2,000 or something like that to show how you can discharge debt and also get money back from the IRS and so on. The guy said, he said, have you had any success with this? And he said, yeah, I just did this on my house. And he said, I just got back $180,000. And so my buddy made him an offer. He said, well, you're not exactly hurting for money. So how about we do this? Instead of me paying you for this technique, how about you show me how to do it? I'll do it and then give you half of the money that I make on this $350,000 mortgage. And the guy refused. Why? Because he hadn't actually done it. I've never seen any of this stuff be successful. That's just my thought. Your mileage may vary. And if you feel you need to pursue something like that, then by all means go for it.
And if you find someone that's actually been successful and there's, evidence, share it.
Oh, yeah,
we'd
share
love
it.
to.
I'd love to see it. One final thing I'll say in regards to that is stay away from OID, original issue discount. Everyone I saw do that back when they first started doing it ended up in prison. Okay, with that said, my goal here, of course, is not to instill fear. It's just to tell you to be careful because there's a lot of folks out there right now who are very desperate. And with the way our economy is going, the way our country is being taken downhill, folks are going to get more and more desperate. And when they do, they're going to try more and more desperate things. And a lot of this stuff is just distraction. I think a lot of these folks out here are disinformation agents. I've had people who tried for years to get me to join into this General Assembly that's run by, what is her name? Anna von Reitz. And something about Anna von Reitz did not hit me well from the beginning, like just listening to her. And I actually got to the point at one point where I told my inner circle to just not even mention her name to me because I didn't want to hear any more about her. But one of the people who was pressing me to join this General Assembly finally came to me recently and said, I think all this stuff is a distraction. And I said, well, I think you're right. Because all the folks that engage in that type of stuff tend to get results. And I'm about results. I'm about solving problems, problem solving. That's what I'm after. So if it's the same thing with this UCC stuff, filing UCC one on your name, that stuff has a use, but I don't think it's appropriate for what the stuff we want to do in either getting out of the system or avoiding things, obligations that we run into when we're in the system. So I think that the answers are actually a whole lot simpler than filing tons of forms and learning how to file this form and that form and the form and try to get control of it. And anyone who uses the term straw man, I think you need to be wary of them. I've used that term in the past, but I absolutely at this point have learned to detest the sovereign citizen movement or anyone who identifies as sovereign because I'm not sovereign. I have God above me, right? Now, God also tells us that folks are equal, right? And that the master is not above the servant. You need to remember that when you walk into court. Okay, the master is not above the servant. There is nothing.
Having the stack on the printer.
There is nothing in any rule book anywhere that says that a judge or a lawyer or a CPS agent or an IRS agent is better than you. And actually, they have a whole lot less power than you do once you realize who you are. So keep that in mind, that the more you learn, the more you understand that you're far more powerful than these folks. So let's just look at one more to try to get this across. Okay. Um, did you know that you were driving over the speed limit? Really? I don't remember driving over anything back there. Did I hit something? Do you know why you're here? That might be something a judge might ask you in court. Do you know why you're here? Well, absolutely, I know why I'm here. Okay, why are you here? Well, I'm here to do my Heavenly Father's work. There you go. You just answered the question. They can't get you for not answering the question. You cannot be held in contempt of court for not answering a particular way. You can't be held in contempt of court for answering with your own definitions of the words. And at some point, you may need to gently remind those that you're interacting with that you offered to share your definition of the words before you started. Because keep in mind 1 USC subsection 1, their definition of the words are insane. Okay. So with that said, does anyone have any questions? Now, usually we go on for a pretty good long time with questions. I don't think I have that fortitude tonight. I'll be more than happy to leave the chat open, but I've had a really long day, so I'm probably going to retire early, but I'll be more than happy to answer any questions about anything we've had on previous calls or what we've talked about on this call. Just keep in mind that the technique I just explained to you has a lot of wisdom in it. And even though you may feel dumb doing it, it can save you your freedom. It can keep you custody of your children, right?
So, you know how to screen share?
Yeah.
Okay. You know the short about the fella
Oh,
that did the job interview?
that's
and
great.
That's like a perfect example. There's the link.
The job interview.
Yeah, but you'll have to like click the link, I guess.
Oh, this guy absolutely went
He
on
nails
talking. Yeah, he went on talking, and it's funny and it sounds like nonsense. But the way that he went talking on about this is absolutely great. Now, I have not ever tried to play a video on one of these Zoom calls. So real quick, let's see if we can do that. This
Well,
is
hold
going to
on.
be a bit of a,
Click that first
all
and
right.
get it opened in a window.
All right.
Now go back to the Zoom. Now do share screen. Here, share screen.
There it is. All right, here we go. If this works. And I might need some input from someone to see if they can hear this, but you should be able to hear it. Let's see if it works.
Telling a job interview or a story that makes sense. Y'all stay tuned.
So tell me a little bit about yourself.
I just graduated from home last year ago. My degree in walking fish with a minor in water in the snow because I'm mop air. I'm also a dent that fixes feet at the vet when I'm wild asleep. So I think this job would be pretty good for my mom since she doesn't have kids.
Wait, what are you talking about?
As I was saying that my twin uncle was like walking meatless dogs, right? Come to find out the dryer was wet from folding dishes because the kitten dogs was mooing.
I don't think this is going to work out. This is not a good fit for our company, and I would not hold your breath waiting for a phone call.
So do I start last year?
All right. Could you all hear that?
Yes.
Yes.
That sounded like word salad, didn't it? I wouldn't exactly go on like he did. I would
No.
try to prattle about something that was more related to my own definition of one of the words.
But that mindset that he got in to be able to creatively think that way.
That was good. And that is the exact response that you want from the authority figure in front of you. The exact response. You want the judge to look at you and say, I don't think this is going to work out. Don't expect a call from us. Get out. That's what you want. You've won if you get that, right? So how many people think I'm insane? Because if you do, I'm on the right track, right? Kids are really good at this. If you try to teach this to your kids, make sure you qualify it before you start that they're not allowed to use this on you when you're telling them to brush their teeth, do their homework, or go to bed.
We have a question. There's a hand raise.
Oh, yes.
Whoever's on the iPhone.
Go ahead and ask your question.
Yeah, it's Angie here. So let's say if it's with a police officer, you first have to let him know you want to use your own definition of words, or you just go and straight do it. And how do I know if it works I got a little confused, sorry.
That's all right. The place where you're going to want to come right out and say, today when we're communicating, I want to use my own, I have definitions that I want to use. I want to use my definitions for my words, is going to be the courtroom. You're not going to do that with a police officer. Now, you might curtail this tactic. You might customize it for yourself, in which case you would, but I don't see the need for that. The police officer, and let's look more like, let's take a situation not where it's a traffic stop, because traffic stops vary widely depending on who you are when you get pulled over. If you have a license and registration and you're going to show that, then you're probably going to want to play the game a little bit more. And if you're just getting a traffic ticket, it's really not that important. Although this is a good opportunity. I love traffic court because traffic court is a place to experiment with stuff like this with very minimal risk of getting put in jail. Because if you get put in jail when you're in traffic court, you're really screwing something up. But let's say that a police officer, you step outside your door to go to work one morning, and all of a sudden you find yourself faced with a police officer, say a sheriff's deputy, and a CPS agent, right? A CPS employee. And they say, are you Mrs. Zanasi? And you are Zanasi, right? You might want to employ this technique because there's nothing about what is going to happen in that interaction that is going to benefit you in the least. They're not there to give you money. They're there to try to develop a charge against you. Okay. Anytime a police officer is talking to you, unless you're the one that called them, the only reason they've not arrested you is because they don't have enough information yet to arrest you. And the way that they get that information is by asking questions, right? And anytime you provide an answer to a question, you're both locking yourself down into that answer, and you're also making a statement, and that statement can and will be used against you. Now, in court, it can't be used for you. It can only be used against you. That's why they tell you that. What we're doing here is we're actually hacking the system. Okay, so if a police officer walks up to your door, knocks on the door, and you make the mistake of answering the door, and you say, "How can I help you?" And they say, is your name Alex Smith? And let's just say you do have a legal name that you use of Alex Smith. The worst thing you can say at that point is, "Yes, I'm Alex Smith." That would be terrible. If you filed your ANC, you might say, I know what Alex Smith is. I'm a representative for Alan Smith. And if you've got business with Alan Smith, you can give any documentation you might have to me, and I'll be more than happy to make sure it's addressed appropriately. But do not give an open-ended answer like we've been trained, because what's what we're trained in school, right? We're even told to put our legal name on the top of all of our papers, right? I had a teacher that was very specific, wanted us to write our last name first and then put our first name and then our middle name. Like, she was very specific on how we were supposed to write it. We were trained. I was trained from a young age to think that I am that legal name. Now, let's say that you get past that and the police officer was to say something like, "Well, I was talking with Joe Smith down the street, and he said that, that you hit him in an argument last night. Do you know anything about that?" You could, instead of actually answering to that situation, you could take the words "hit" and say, "Oh man, I know all about hitting people. When I was young, my dad used to beat the crap out of me. It was terrible. I mean, there was this one time when he told me to go feed the dogs and I didn't, and I forgot all," and then you just prattle on, right? And after a little bit of this, they're going to give up. And that's what you want. You want them to give up. But you don't have to come right out and tell a police officer, "I'm going to use my own definitions to the words." That just doesn't seem to have a purpose. In court, yes. In court, you're going to want to do that.
Can I add a prattle?
Prattle. By all means.
Okay.
Prattle or Ben is up.
Prattle away. The important concept, I think, of all this is to know who you are and to know that whenever you're confronted with someone, or by someone who you have no business with, and they are asking you questions, and they're official, and they're, you know, immediately trying to pin you into a situation that you're not ready for. You're never ready for that kind of stuff. If you know who you are, your authority, and you know what they're doing, then um, then those situations won't take you off guard, won't scare you, won't um, confuse you. You won't think to yourself, oh, well, I'm a good citizen, I need to do what these guys say because, you know, whatever. What John said a little bit ago can't be stressed enough. When someone's at your door, I mean, the situation, you know, the sheriff and CPS and whatever, that's pretty intense. And a lot of homeschoolers fear that kind of confrontation. They're never told how to deal with it other than, oh, call your lawyer and, you know, don't say anything and we'll take care of it, and, you know, and stuff like that. You know who you are. You know, we're assuming that you know, haven't beat your kids and you, you know, you're a good person, and that this is an entrapment situation. All right. Don't let the startle factor take you off of your, you know, God-given authority of knowing who you are and knowing pretty much what it's going to be about. And it's not going to be good. There's nothing ever that you can say to an authority who's asking you questions for John's right, for the exact reason they don't have anything until you give them information, until you make a statement. And that's why the prattling works, because you're not giving them information that will check off their boxes to say, you know, to incriminate you.
That's it
You're
right
also,
there.
yeah,
They're wanting to try to drive you down a certain path.
Right. They're also and you can't think that you're doing a trick or you're well, you use the word hacking the system, and that's kind of a colloquial thing, but what you're doing is you are taking charge. It's a trite saying, you know, it's just knowing who you are, but knowing your authority, but knowing knowing what they're looking for and being, you know, prattling about it in order to not give them information and not seem like a jerk, you know, say, who's asking, which could be an answer, you know, who wants to know, you know, who are you, you know, are you Ben Bennett? Who's asking? You know, that's kind of defensive and aggressive, and that, but in a way, you know, prattling could be the, you know, best way to de-escalate any kind of situation and to um, set the police off their game, because they're not scaring you. The best thing you can do is to absolutely smile and like nothing's wrong. If they even smell fear, then they've won. But you know what's going on. You know your authority. You know you're not in trouble. This is, again, assuming that you haven't done anything. And you know why they're there. You're just making sure that you do not give them information that they're asking in the format that they're asking. You know, what's your name? You know, are you Ben Bennett? You know, man, I don't feel like them. You know, what can I do you for? You know, and do you know why I pulled you over? So, one of my answers was no idea. I just pulled over because your lights were on. That's what we're supposed to do, right? Things like that.
You gotta be like you gotta be like a I don't know, I tend to take things back to farming, and what they're trying to do is they're trying to drive you down a particular through particular gates, through particular lanes, down fields, and they're trying to get you into a particular box. And that becomes literal at the very end when you find yourself in jail. And what you want to be is, I don't know if anyone here has ever tried to round up chickens. They don't go where you want them to go. They're always shooting off to the left, off to the right. It's insane. You cannot herd a chicken. Not very well. You need a really long stick and some help. But that's what you want to do. Imagine yourself being the chicken in this story. When they ask you questions and they're trying to lead you down a particular path, you need to be the chicken. You need to duck over here, duck over there. You need to do things totally unexpected, right? Because we are the prey in this legal system. We're the ones that they prey off of, right? And chickens know a lot about being prey because everything eats chicken, and their mortality rate is 100%. That's why they act like they do. They're always looking around, scared, worried, afraid they're going to get eaten, right? And when you're in court, that's kind of what you're doing. The worst thing you can do is when the judge says, walk over here and step into this box over here. Worst thing you can do is do exactly what they say. And that's what they're doing when they ask you questions. They're boxing you in.
And they're gonna be talking like they're, you know, whatever they're asking you to do is, or whatever questions they ask, whatever they're asking you to do, they're going to make you feel like you're being rude, you're being disobedient, you're being a jerk, you are being unreasonable. And that feeling that's the feeling that each of us individuals, I want to say what you, but all of us, that feeling of needing to be the nice person, to be the reasonable person, no matter what's happening to you. You know, we're just asking your name because we've got a situation and we need to know your name and we need to know your license number and stuff like that. We think that those are reasonable requests and that we're being unreasonable if we disobey. The thing is that we're not disobeying, we are redirecting, and we are doing it in a manner that does not require making statements of fact, but just redirect by asking things in a question format.
It's okay to make statements using the tactic that we talked about, that we described earlier, as long as the statements have absolutely nothing in hell related to what they're trying to get you to talk about. You can pitch out a red herring, and if they ask you, did you file an income tax? Did you file a return? You could say, you're asking if I filed a paper, right? No, yeah. Did you file a paper? Yeah, absolutely. I filed a paper yesterday in my filing box at home. And I actually know of a guy that did this when he was being prosecuted for failure to file. And they said, did you file a return? He said, I filed one. He said, I filed like 3 or 4 returns. I returned some stuff back to myself and filed it, and it's at home in my filing box. And the judge says, what? I said, I filed it. It's in my filing box. And he said, the judge said, what did it say? He said, it said, screw you, judge. And of course the judge said, what? And he said, well, you asked me what it said. I filed it in my filing box at home. So how are they going to hit you with failure to file when you just said you filed something? Now
But
they're
if
going to try to redirect you back,
Yeah,
but you just
what-
keep doing this over and over.
What if they ask very specific? Did you file a 1040 form for the year 2022 before the deadline?
Oh, the deadline. Oh yeah, I was in my brother's hospital room the other day. He just passed away and he deadlined.
No, that's flatlined.
You might have come in a little late, Ben, but we actually talked about a technique where you use your own definitions. We went over 1 U.S. Code subsection 1, which basically explains how the entire U.S. Code, the meaning of all their words, means whatever the hell they want it to mean.
And you can,
Oh yes, Andrea just came up with a good one. That's actually one of my favorite movie scenes. She was talking about. It reminds me of how he answers on True Grit. When he's on the stand. So the main character in the modern True Grit, we just watched this the other day. He's on the stand, and the guy says, he says, I was backing up, and he says, in which direction were you going? And he says, well, I always go backwards when I back up. And it sounds funny, but that's the essence of what we've been teaching tonight.
okay.
Real quick, I want to read you all one more section from Matthew 10. Okay. Because one of the things that folks are going to do is they're going to be worried about what they're going to say, especially if you have a court date. You're going to be worried. What am I going to say? You're going to try to forecast in your head. You're going to lay awake at night. Your brain's going to spin, and you're going to try to figure out, what am I going to say if they ask this? What am I going to say if I get asked that? So I'm going to read a short paragraph here from Matthew 10. And this is the start of the sentence the section of scripture that I absolutely love, and probably one of the pieces I use the most. Behold, I send you forth as sheep in the midst of wolves. Be ye therefore wise as serpents and harmless as doves. But beware of men, for they will deliver you up to the councils, and they will scourge you in their synagogues. Is that not what the United States is wonderful at doing, right? More folks get put in jail in the United States by percentage of population than any other country. But beware of men. So God's telling us here about what the whole reason we're having this Zoom call tonight. God's telling us about this. Beware of men, for they will deliver you up to the councils, and they will scourge you in their synagogues. And ye shall be brought before governors and kings for my sake, for a testimony against them and the Gentiles. Now here's the crucial part. But when they deliver you up, take no thought how or what ye shall speak, for it shall be given you in the same hour what ye shall speak. For it is not ye that speak, but the Spirit of your Father which speaketh in you. When that judge asked me if I was crazy, that federal judge, he was testing me. He was trying to pin me. He was trying to find an opening. This is contracting, and a federal judge understands this more than anyone. At the time of this particular hearing, and keep in mind, I was in chains and shackles, so I was already pretty well beaten up there. I don't mean physically. I just mean my emotionally, mentally, spiritually. I'd taken a beating. And this was all good because it got me closer to God, because that was one of the first times in my life that I actually prayed. When that judge asked me if I was crazy, I knew that this was a trap, and I didn't know how to avoid it. So I said a quick prayer. I took a deep breath, and the words that came out of my mouth, those weren't mine. When I asked that judge if he was qualified to make a mental or medical evaluation or determination, that wasn't me. That wasn't, the words came out of my mouth, but I can tell you, I had not scripted that. I had not thought of that. And before the words came out of my mouth, I never even knew them. And I'm more than certain that that was God showing me that he was guiding me in that situation.
And at that point, you were an atheist.
At that point, I was an atheist. Agnostic atheist. I wasn't a follower. That's for sure. And so that was one of the things that started showing me that there was a God. He isn't that far away from us. He's around us, and he will guide you. If you follow him, he will tell you what to say. Those words will be given to you when you need them. Take a deep breath when you're dealing with these folks. Focus on one word in that sentence. Determine what they're wanting, and then change the definition and answer that question instead. It can save you a lot of trouble. It's 9:25. I just got reminded. Does anyone else have any questions? If not, I'm probably going to go ahead and I can leave the chat up if you guys want to chat. But I'm probably going to stop the recording and call it a night for me. But if anyone has any questions, I'll be happy to address them.
Tim has one.
Hey, Tim. Hold on, you gotta take yourself off mute, man. Do you have a question?
Hold on, he's still muted.
You're still muted. I'm gonna hit the ask to unmute button. There you go.
You can hear me now?
I can hear you now, brother.
Oh, I just wanted to say hi. That was like, oh, I wish I came earlier. I was herding chickens. And it actually works. I have them trained so when I start to clap. So I used to be a teacher of kids. I used to teach kids. So I a lot of the methods. And I just started, all right, time for bed, girls. And and I just start walking around and I put my hands up and I do a little flap and I'm really chill about it. And they just start to go now.
You trained them.
They trust me for some reason. I don't.
And you didn't even have to use a red herring to do it. You can listen to the beginning of our call, man, when I get it posted up on the YouTube channel.
Yeah. No, it sounds fascinating. What Ben was saying. Hey, hi Ben. I've only exchanged written word with you, man. Yeah. Hi.
Yeah, actually, this is the first time. This is the first time I've seen you, Tim.
No, we saw each other back probably in last summer. It was a Zoom call.
Gotcha. Okay, gotcha.
I was just as ugly then as I am today, man. So actually, I was probably a little better looking then, man.
Oh, you're alive and kicking. That's what counts. Tim has had a very rough time over the past year. He's a lucky man. Very lucky. Thank God he's still alive.
Yeah.
That's why I just leave a picture up.
You guys might be interested in this. I was in complete septic shock back in the fall, and it came to a head in December, and I was like dying. I didn't know it. I didn't have health insurance, so I thought it was a flu. And anyways, it resulted in me being in the hospital, and they called me, my parents, to come say goodbye to me at like 3 a.m. Anyways, during the septic shock, I was still home. It was a fog, but I killed a cat, and I'm not going to give any details, but it was horrific. The cat didn't deserve to die. But somehow the cops were involved.
Tim was not himself. Let's put it that way.
No. I have little kittens running around me right now, and like, I don't like people who abuse.
Not an animal abuser.
So I was in the hospital with open heart surgery this winter, and I got a call from a lieutenant when I was in the hospital. It was the only call I got, and it was like, and he found out I was in the hospital. He's like, "Oh, we'll let you take it easy." But they basically, court was on the 15th of September, and I've been I'm recuperating, dude. Like, I'm like not myself. I'm mentally a little bit slow, which is fine, but I'm not competent to go to court to defend myself, but like they were threatening a year in jail for animal cruelty. And I went to the DA after I got out of the hospital, and he was trying to get me to do probation, but I'm like, I don't think I'm guilty. But I didn't know why. I just knew I wasn't guilty. And I went through the whole thing, went to magistrate, declared, I'm defending myself. They wanted me to go. They did not like that I wouldn't get a lawyer. that really, really ruffled their feathers. The magistrate, and I'm like, no, I'm not going to get a lawyer. I'm going to defend myself, I guess. I mean, I'm not guilty. Anyways, I haven't, basically, I'm the only guy batting for me.
Yeah, you're going to want to catch the first part of this call, Tim. You're going to want to catch the first part of this call. I know you might have already entered.
Here's the good news.
You might have already entered. Go ahead.
I just started taking steps. I asked some bears out here in Colorado, and they gave me some direction. I couldn't find my case online. Well, literally, it just got dismissed. A request to dismiss by the DA, and the judge just approved it this morning. So there's no more case.
Sweet. Congratulations!
And amazing. Yeah, I mean, it's like, wow. And that's a God thing, because I didn't hire anybody. No one was batting for me.
Right.
And yeah, I could go forever talking about it, but it's an act of God.
So for the rest of the folks on the group here and whoever might hear this in the future, if you're in court and you're asked to enter a plea, don't go down that road. Don't enter a plea. What you're going to get asked, the judge will say, how do you plead? Now, if you fail to enter a plea, if you say, well, I'm not going to enter a plea, he'll enter one for you. You want to do the red herring. Well, Your Honor, I woke up this morning and I slept on my right side. And every time I do that, it cuts all the circulation off on my right side. And I plead that my shoulder is killing me this morning. Wise as a serpent, harmless as a dove. All right, guys, I'm going to drop off here. Glad to see everybody. I'm going to leave the thing up, and I'm going to kill my video, but you guys can feel free to go ahead and chat away. Thank you all for coming. Thank you for the input, and I'll get this uploaded just as soon as I can get it processed. You all have a great night.
Don't forget to turn off the recording.
Gotcha.
Well, hi guys, I'm Ben.